Meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. And please now make sure that all those cell phones and other noise-making devices are turned off. I will do the same. And we will, it's really embarrassing when our phones go off.
Yeah.
We'll get underway in just a moment. But first, I'd like to tell you about some upcoming programs at the Commonwealth Club.
My stuff is.
Tomorrow at noon, Ken Walsh, the chief White House correspondent for U.S. News and World Report, will be here to talk about living in the White House bubble. We'll talk about how isolating it can be to be president. Give us an inside dish on what is going on behind the facade. And on Saturday at 2 p.m. in the afternoon of December 7th, the Reverend Al Sharpton will be here.
Whoa, I like Al. Yeah, Reverend Al.
You got some boots there, all right. To talk about his new memoir, recalling decades of being an activist and a civil rights leader. Both programs will be here at the club. It is my pleasure to extend a special welcome to any new Commonwealth Club members who are here today. You'll meet the most well-informed and interesting people in the Bay Area when attending Commonwealth Club events, all of whom are as interested as you are in civic discussion and social interaction. There are question cards on your seats for questions for Tom. And these will be collected and reviewed during the program. We'll be asking questions later on in the program. And we will now begin the program for our radio, television, and online audiences. This is my favorite part of the program, the gavel. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. You can find the Commonwealth Club online at commonwealthclub.org. I'm Joe Garofoli. I'm a reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle and your moderator for today's program. Thom Hartmann is a progressive national and internationally syndicated talk show host on both radio and television, and the author of 24 books. His new book is The Crash of 2016, The Plot to Destroy America and What We Can Do to Stop It. The book begins with the premise that the pillars of democracy that once supported a booming middle class have been corrupted. He warns that America could very well be on the verge of another economic crash. He questions the dominance of corporate power and is concerned that greed has overwhelmed sound democratic infrastructure and governance. Hartmann urges action and presents a roadmap to redemption and a critical wake-up call to avert disaster and make our nation whole again. Thom spent much of his life working with and for the International Salem Relief Organization, and he and his wife Louise founded a community for abused children and a school for learning disabled and ADHD students in New Hampshire's White Mountains. He hails from Michigan, but has lived and worked with his wife and 3 children on several continents. They now live on a boat in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Mr. Thom Hartmann.
Thank you, Joe, and thanks to George Dobbins, and thanks to all the great folks here at the Commonwealth Club. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thanks to Link TV for videotaping this, and it's great to be back on Link TV and here at the Commonwealth Club. I opened the book with a story that I read when I was 8 or 9 years old in Amazing Stories, I believe it was, the science fiction monthly magazine that Joe Campbell used to publish, used to edit, that my dad subscribed to, and I used to read voraciously. And in this story, this was, of course, when I was 8 or 9 years old, that was like 1958, 59, 60. And so nobody had been to the backside of the moon at that point in time. And so in this story, these astronauts they've taken off and they're going to go around the backside of the moon and figure out what's on the backside of the moon. Everybody's always wondered what's on the backside of the moon. We've always, all of human history, we've only seen the front side of the moon. What's the deal? What's going on? And they're in the capsule and they sign off radio silence because they're about to go around the backside and they know it's going to break the radio waves, and besides that they want to turn off the vacuum tubes and save the electricity, and this was the 60s. And as they get around the backside, they're looking out the window and there's just this gasp, and then a debate breaks out shall we tell them? Because they didn't, I mean, nobody knew what they'd see there. You know, are we going to find a crashed spaceship? Is there going to be a lost civilization? Are there going to be lizard people? Is there going to be, you know, waterfalls? Is there going to be more or less volcanic? I mean, what's on the backside of the moon? And they were so horrified by what they saw that it almost turned into a fistfight in the cockpit, in the capsule. And eventually they came to the conclusion collectively that as they were coming back around the front side of the moon, they had to turn the radio back on. They were just going to say, it looks just like the front. You know, we're not going to tell anybody. Because the backside of the moon, what are those things that the cars go up and down really fast? What are they called in the rides? You know, roller coasters. Yeah. Okay. The backside of the moon was all made out of the old kind of 2x4s that they made the old roller coasters out of, and it was holding up a canvas facade, which was the front side of the moon. So it was just, this 2x4 superstructure that was holding this canvas in the front, and it was basically this hollowed out thing. I think it's a perfect metaphor for our economy. We had, and there's a couple of themes to the book that I want to touch on very briefly. We have seen this before. We've been through these cycles before. We've figured out what our economy is like and how to fix it, and you know what to do about these in the past. And we figured out the solution. We don't need to call up a Swedish economist and say, you know, how do we fix this thing? You know, we did it before in the United States. So there's an economic part to it, which explains the how, and I'll get into that in just a second. But there's also a philosophical part, which explains the why. Why would somebody put into place economic policies that essentially have destroyed the American middle class and had, you know, set up the crash of 2008? And the basic premise of the book, by the way, is that we're still in the middle of the crash of 2008, that it never resolved itself, that they just threw bubblegum and baling wire at it, and just like George Bush tried to hold it off until after the elections of 2008 for you know, rational political and partisan purposes. You don't want a crash happening on your watch. The Obama administration is doing the same thing, trying to hold this thing off until November 2016. The difference is that he's got an entire Republican Party trying to bring it down around his ears, and Bush didn't have that. But Bush still wasn't able to hold it off. You know, it's still blew up. So these things like, you know, hey, the stock market hit 16,000 the other day. Well, you know, 80% of the stocks are owned by the top 20% of Americans. That what we're looking at is the wealth of wealth. We're not looking at the economy. The economy, you know, people say, oh, the economy is great. You know, look at you know, all these people living in all these houses. You don't see the fact that half those houses, or a very large percentage of those houses, have lost most of their equity. You know, you see people driving down the street. Oh, look at all these people in their new cars. So you don't see the fact that 40 years ago people owned those cars. Now they're renting them. They're what's called leases. That the equity has been taken out. So the physicalness of this, the American dream, up until I would say the Reagan Revolution recalibrated it. The American dream was essentially the story of my dad's life. It was well, my dad joined when he was 17. He joined the Army, World War II. He was going to go off and fight in World War II. The war ended while he was in boot camp. So he went to Japan as part of the occupation. And then when he came back on the GI Bill, he went to college. He wanted to be a history professor, wanted to get his PhD in history, and that was his goal. But he and my mom met and fell in love and got married, and 13, 14 months later I came along, and that put the kibosh on his plans. He was 2 years into college. Mom had already graduated, but he had not. And so he got a job in a tool and die shop where he worked for 40 years, a good union job. He ran the office mostly, although he knew how to run all the machines. It was an absentee owner. It was a little 14-man shop in Lansing Tool and Die, sinking company.